Don't forget, I've got all your scores lined up here, so I know exactly where you're at.
Oh my God, yeah. And I think
Boomtown is my favourite of the season so far, and I am giving it a rounded 6.
I think where I'm going wrong is I'm perhaps not referring back to some of my previous scores when I am compiling my scores.
I think where you're going wrong is you don't you have a figure in your head which changes as you speak.
I think where it's going wrong when it comes to the scoring, it's like the Magic Roundabout theme tune starts playing and something goes round and round.
I always think it's like the pinball machine in Sesame Street. It just gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, it's a 7. And it's talking.
If it jams, you have to have a decimal. Hello and welcome to Talking About. We are still talking about series. Oh, you think I know what else? Series 1. I want to say season. I just want to say season. I'm just an old-fashioned boy at heart. That's what it is. We are still talking about series. Oh my days. We are still talking about, we're definitely talking about Series 1, and I want you to like this, I want you to subscribe to this, I want you to be notified when this goes live. No, not all of you subscribe. Subscribers get more, probably. Comment and do stuff like that. I am Paul or P-Bal. And I'm joined by...
Hello, it's James.
And hello, it's Jason.
I still wondering if it's a little bit more Noel Edmonds.
Oh, no.
If Noel Edmonds went gangster.
It's that, I mean, the bling is unbelievable, James.
It's got my mayoral chain on.
What carroty gold is that?
It's pure plastic gold.
0.5 carat.
Yes.
Plastic. It's plastic. It could be like a Victoria Beckham gold necklace. It's not even gold. It's just sterling. It's just plates that she does. She doesn't even claim she just says gold. Lies. Those Spice Girl lies all the time. Anyway, I didn't even mention Emma Bunton. I didn't mention it. Previously on Doctor Who and the Talking About, our rundown is a long game in 8th position, End of the World 7th, Aliens of London World War 3 in 6th, 5th place is Rose, 4th place is The Unquiet Dead, joint 2nd is Dalek, and I thought it had another day, the Wigfield hit, Father's Day, and our current leader by a mere half a point. That's better than a 3-way tie, otherwise it's like Eurovision 69 and it gets silly. It's The Empty Child and the Doctor Dancers. Or Dancers, depending on where you're from.
You're going to need the Top of the Pops theme music by the time we get to the last one in this.
It's awkward because you never know when what era is going to get cancelled and you have to go back and edit the video out. And I mean, to be fair, you have got a suspicious Top of the Pops presenter look going on there, James.
And I didn't want to go there with that, but it's almost there.
Back in the 70s. Anyway.
It's a very versatile look. That wig. Anyway, today...
Sorry, what was that?
Has it been out before? Has I had a run through before on one of the other ones?
No,
this new wig.
This is a new...
Did you think you got the Janet wig and given it a little trim?
Yeah, a little jiggle.
He's bleached his Janet and cut it down. I mean, if you combed it out, it could be a Princess Diana.
Wow.
Something to think about maybe for the coronation weekend. So today we are talking about Doctor Who and the Boomtown. Oh, that scared me. Talking of scary, because it's his manner, Jason's going to introduce this like a pro.
I can't cope with the build-up for this, but we are. in my manor, as you've said. And just around the corner from here is where all the action happened. Okay, so there are dirty deeds afoot in Cardiff Council. And the mayor is not quite who you think she is. And actually, that's probably not far off for Cardiff Council, actually, knowing some of the dirty deeds
Have you
just
read the local news?
That's all I did. I've just picked up the newspaper, which I can coincidentally see in the background there, James, on your screen.
Oh, what? This thing behind me? Yeah.
Are you suggesting I'm the mayor of Cardiff?
I'm just saying.
You're just the mayor in Cardiff. I think it's completely different.
I think this is very true. There is nothing here you have said that isn't right. So the TARDIS has landed on the Rift to repower, and they've got a bit of a prolonged stopover in the most fabulous place on Earth, Cardiff Bay. But along the way, of course, they have to work out what's going on because the Doctor recognizes a face that he's seen before. So this is just a jolly old romp of a story for me. And it brings back a returning alien. Now, viewer, I am trying not to say the word, but I am going to, I'm afraid, have to name the aliens in this one. If you remember our previous stint with this particular alien, I'm not very good at saying the word sardine. Although I think I might have just said it there, so I'll get away with that. So we've got Margaret back. So thank you for the prompt there, James. But this is a bit of a jolly old romp, this. It's a bit of a story that closes up the sort of the story from earlier on in the season. But it allows us the opportunity to explore the character of Blonde. And I think it just plays out for some fairly hilarious scenes, particularly the one when the Doctor takes Blonde to dinner, which I think is probably single-handedly one of the best scenes in this season. It showcases Cardiff Bay, which is never a bad thing, and because obviously I kind of like always showcasing that. And yeah, it's a pretty good story leading up to the finale stories that we've got coming up. So yeah, I like this one.
I love how it's gone from Slovene to Margaret to Blonde because that's the easiest thing.
I'm going to get away with this and just say Blonde throughout now because I don't have to name the alien because I've got away with it once and I'm going to stick with it.
I'm just going to say thank you to anyone at home that made it through that introduction. That was quite something.
Well, you know, I had to give a little introduction for this one. I wanted it to be a little less scatty than some of the introductions I give. I don't think I possibly managed that. So
I was waiting for him to say Pinnacle. I was so waiting for him to say it.
No. Not ready to say that word yet.
But I do want to ask, is it a romp?
Well, I just think there's certain elements of comedy in this that actually make it quite amusing. And I'll call it a romp for that reason.
I'm teasing you.
He'll start calling it a rom-com in a minute, and we'll be like, "Oh no!"
No, I'm only teasing because you said it twice. Was just like, what was he going to say? But then he just went, "Yes, it's a good romp." And to be fair, it is. There's lots of. Do you know what? There's so much that going on in this episode, and I remember when this first aired, just thinking, oh, it's a little bit of filler. When I was younger, I was just like, this is the episode that came before the finale, and it was kind of just like, let's just get through this episode because then we know we've got Daleks coming up at the end of the season. However, now this is the episode I really look forward to. This is the episode where I'm just like, and I was saying this very early on, very controversially, I'd happily take this episode over the finale, because whilst it's great to have Daleks back and everyone being slaughtered, what I love in this episode is all the strands that are pulled together from other episodes in the series so far. So you're absolutely right. You've got the character of Margaret, who we last saw, supposedly blown up in Downing Street, who's now trying to escape Earth. You've got Mickey returning, and it's really the kind of the end of the Mickey and Rose. They sort of, it's at this point where they realise that actually they are on very different paths, and there's a whole sort of thing of let's get a hotel room, and then he sort of says, "Oh, I've been seeing Sheena or something."
Trisha Delaney.
Delaney. Rose gets kind of like, you know, a bit jealous about it, but it's like she's been off and she's been having all these adventures. So you see the dynamic of that relationship. But what I love, and Jason, you've already alluded to some of the comedy in this, but what I love is that sequence when the doctor takes her to dinner. The whole thing, not just the comedy bit. The comedy bits are, you know, thankfully are short, and you get past that quite quickly. And then you get onto the real substance, which is, does the doctor have the authority to take her to her death? You know, it examines lots of consequences, and we talked about consequences in other episodes, but in this one, it's the first time they really sort of hold a microscope up to the doctor's actions. And often what will happen at the end of the adventure is they just get in the TARDIS and fly away, and you never know what happens afterwards. It's a couple of the classic stories come back to it. This is a bit like the Ark, where the Ark is split into two, and you see the future bit and what happened next. Now you've got the Doctor coming back and actually having to deal with what happened at the end of the two-parter. And I just think it's a really well constructed and interesting episode. The threat of the rift and, you know, the extrapolator and stuff like that, it's kind of immaterial, because it's more about the characters and the consequences of their actions so far. I mean, Jack kind of takes a bit of a back seat in this because he's not been involved in many of the other stories. So he's sort of in the TARDIS being the tech person and trying to get everything sorted. But it really examines separately the Doctor and Rose, and I think it's really good from that perspective.
I'm not sure I quite agree on Boomtown being about the consequences of his actions, insofar as Blonde escaping unbeknownst to the viewer from the previous story isn't, I don't think, any different to like when the Master escapes or something, and then he turns up and he has another plot. Or I don't, because the Doctor's actions are trying to just save their lives in the what's it one was, I suppose, having uncovered a scheme that the other bit I'm on board with it is the if you have to look someone in the eye and say, I've got to kill you, you're a bad person, at what point are you allowed to say that? Where it's the genesis of the Daleks, do I have the right thing, isn't it? It's fine to say she's a bad person, but he has the great line, doesn't he? He's like, you're pleading out of a dead woman's lips. There was a Margaret before you. You know, you killed her, and you're now pleading for clemency. So you haven't got a sort of foot to stand. I mean, the great thing with this, at the heart of it, is it's Nettie B, isn't it? It's Annette Badland. She's and it's great because it is Russell's sort of within the production scheme, because he read lines as the Doctor with her or something from the first story, and he was like, we've got to get her back because she's really good, and explains why she's the one that survives and not the others when the bomb goes up. It's like, we've only got, can I say one? But yeah, and it is great because it takes what was a good part in the original. I don't think she had a bad part in the original, but it expands it into a really good part. And she can, and it's her great talent that she can do the comedy, but she can do the nasty, and she can, and it's on a pin. So, and also that plays with you as a viewer, because she can do the you know, maybe we are feeling sorry for her, and then the next minute she can have the big Slovene claw and be like, I'll break her neck.
I mean, I agree with you about this is a great showcase for her, and I think, as I said, it adds dimension to the character previously created. But you're right about the comedy aspect of it, because you know you get the scenes like the Doctor turns up at the mayor's office, and the sort of clerk goes in and comes out, and the doctor goes, she's climbing through the window, isn't she? And it's kind of, and then you get that whole thing outside where she's running up and down, and she transmats away, and the doctor sort of transmats her back. But you're right, you then get to the restaurant bit, and there's a couple of other bits in the TARDIS where it is being played absolutely seriously. But this is a great example where I think Russell's really good at this, is to write that sort of comedy and then juxtaposition it with that sort of serious element and meld it together and make a good 45 minutes out of it. It's about caring for the character again. We've talked about this quite often, and he has the ability, and in fact the writers in the modern series have that ability to be able to create even a little character or a small part character and get us to care about them. But you come out of this actually understanding the machinations of what's driving her, and the deviousness, but actually at heart, she's just really, I suppose, forgotten who she is to a degree. That's my reading for it, and she doesn't really see that she's doing bad anymore, even though she is doing bad. So I just think it's written extremely well. And actually, you're right, James, about it being, back in the day, it was perceived as the filler, but it most certainly isn't a filler, and one that I'd go back and watch a number of times.
I mean, they've taken, when we reviewed Aliens in London and World War III, we were talking about how, and I think P-Bal, you mentioned it, the Slovene don't really get much of a development story. We know that they're sort of pack hunters and they're a close family unit, but we don't know much about them. And a lot of what they did was, focused on the farting and things like that. Whereas they've taken the essence of that in this story, and I know genuinely absolutely agree with what you say about Annette, because Annette brings this character amazingly to life. From the scene where she's in the toilet and the news reporter is sort of basically saying, I know something's going on, and she's contemplating killing her, and then she stops, to that. I mean, even her face later on, when her face is lit up in the TARDIS, she has this like impish sort of look on her face. I don't know how they do it, but she sort of acts. She can smile, and then her face can change, and she's really sort of malevolent and sort of quite, I don't know what the word is. She looks really sort of mischievous, but at the same time, you wouldn't want to trust her because she could kill you. And she just has that sort of flexibility in her face, and the lighting is really good. And the same with her speech. She can do the comedy. Dinner in Bondage. She's all about that. But then when she's explaining what the punishment will be when she goes home, and she says, we'll be dipped in acid and everything else like that, it's just done so chillingly. She does have that ability, and against Eccleston, who in this one actually he's really good. He keeps it very level. He's like you say, he's very sort of like, you're lying for a dead woman's lips and things like that. But he wavers, the doctor wavers as the conversation goes on, because she's getting to him until the sort of plot changes and the rift starts opening up. It's really cleverly done. And you have that storyline going off against the Rose and Mickey storyline, where they're kind of trying to pick things up, and they're in a bad place, and they just get worse. So they're sort of having this conversation where actually they're starting to realize that they probably aren't really suited to each other. And of course, they're interrupted by the rift and what's going on. And both stories have very contrasting but similarly themed endings about fresh starts. Because Mickey basically goes at the end. He just, he leaves without saying goodbye. And obviously Margaret ends up as an egg to live her life again.
So you get Nat back in the next series, isn't it? Because the egg can have grown up.
Yeah. I'd gladly see her back, and she's amazing.
I don't think I ever thought of this story as a filler. I always felt of it, I could see the point of it from the outset, because you couldn't go from the empty child story into the finale. You have to just have that moment where you've got Doctor Who, Rose, and Captain Jack. You have to have that sort of standard episode, because obviously he's had his introduction and the next one is very heightened. So you just need that pause. But actually, at the start, I mean, stone me if you like. At the start, they are fairly insufferable, and I'm kind of with Mickey when he's like, "Have you heard yourselves?" There is that kind of like where they're high fiving and stuff, and you're like, "Oh, and I'm kind of with that. There's a few bits, aren't there? And I can't remember because it's been so many years since I read them. Because I did used to read the books when these came out. But there are actual references, aren't there? A couple of the bits where she's talking about Woman Wept and things like that, where they're actually the books that came in.
They went on those.
Yeah, that tied in. So it rewarded the viewer if you'd had your £7 BBC book thing, didn't it? But no, I think I could always see the point of this. I think the thing that probably goes against it to an extent is that it probably feels a bit cheap, because it is cheap. I mean, it's purposefully cheap. There's no sort of two ways around it. It's reuse the monster from earlier in the season. We've got the CGI ready. We've got the costume ready. It's the series regulars, and it's a very small guest cast. But interesting. Now here are the two top. These might be on. These might be on the dark web facts.
I'll bow to you. Go on.
They're bound to be. They're bound to be.
are the two top facts that I can think of here from the guest cast is William Thomas the first person to appear that's been in the classic series? Is he the first one to break that barrier?
He is the first one. He was in Remembrance of the Daleks.
Have you seen that one, Jason? It's the one with the hand of Omega and the little schoolgirl.
Yes, I gave it a 10 when we scored it in the Talking About series.
It wasn't my favourite of the season, but I score it a 10.
I think I may have referred to it as a pinnacle, actually. I might just have.
That was long before it was a piccolo, maybe. I don't know. So he's the first one to break that barrier of being in both series.
Yeah.
And, drum roll, Aled Pedrick, who was very popular in Chiswick, was originally that Russell wanted him to be in Torchwood. He wanted him to be the regular, and when he wasn't free, they got Gareth to be Yanto. So he missed out. He missed out on all the Torchwood stuff. He must have been. I'm sure he's all right about it. I'm sure he's fine.
Because weirdly, in this episode, Torchwood is already established and under the bay. And there's a line in either one of the books or one of the episodes where older Captain Jack was like, "We can't go to the surface because I know the Doctor and younger me and Rose are doing this adventure." There's a point where there's a crossover and a Torchwood story to this, because Torchwood is already underneath the.
It's right underneath where they're parked. It's as simple as that. And if all that destruction is happening in the bay, you think it might have triggered an alarm or two downstairs in the base.
The other guest cast person that I would pull out. I mean, Marley Harris is she's an icon of Welsh television, isn't she? She's Hinterland, all that sort of stuff. And it's a lovely scene. She does it really well. And there's a part of me sort of watching thinking, oh, you'd actually. I'm not taking anything away from Eve Miles, who's obviously been wonderful. But I think she must have been on the list somewhere. She'd have been a good Gwen. I think I can see that would have worked. But it's just a beautiful scene. And again, to say that I'm only in 2 scenes or something, you get the whole lot there, don't you? And it's just beautifully pitched, and it's a really nice part. But they should get her back, to give her more. I mean, she could come back as the same character. She didn't get eaten, did she? I'll put it on my obscure request list. I want. It's Kathy Salt, isn't it? Was it Kathy Salt?
If you think if Aled might be slightly peeved off that he didn't get Yanto, he missed out on having his own shrine in the bay, of course.
Well, he probably had a shrine after being in Chiswick the way you lot were when you saw it. Lee said soon is mended on that front, I think. So yes, it's a small guest cast. But again, even his character as the secretary in thing, you know where he's at, and it's a nice part, and there's a resolve for it, and I think I've kept saying every week here, it's just character, and there are so many wonderful characters that you it's painted broad, and you can engage with it.
Yeah, and in such a small cast as this episode does have, I think it even highlights it further how well almost every character in these episodes is being written for.
And I think you're right that there is that. They are annoying at the very beginning. They are, I mean, like, if I was Mickey, I would have been like, right, I'm off, because I can't be bothered with any of this. But I guess you get the payoff for that is coming up in the finale when things look really bad. I know I'm not going to suggest spoilers, but they're kind of, at that.
But sorry, if anyone's watching this video before watching the episodes, I want to know why.
Yeah. They do have that feeling of, they think they're invincible, and they can sort of defeat anything that comes along, which I think you get the payoff for that in the next story. But I just, as a piece of writing, it is such a good character piece. It's just it holds so many sort of mirrors up and says, this is this, and we're going to examine this relationship and this relationship, and I just think that it doesn't, for me now, actually, I'm glad it doesn't have hundreds of Slitheen or, whatever else in it, because it is focusing on just that one individual. And you don't even, I think if I remember rightly, you just see the claw a couple of times. There's maybe at the very beginning, but there's no sort of like full-on CGI Slitheen, because
you get the Slitheen in the toilet, don't you?
Yeah, you get the Slitheen in the toilet at the beginning. But then in the TARDIS, it's just the arm. And, and we were saying about the CGI and how some of the CGI wasn't particularly effective. But the arm does look more threatening than a whole CGI Slitheen. So I think actually the stripped down, budget-friendly story actually works really well. And certainly much prefer it to the first two Slitheen stories, because this feels much more grown up, if you like, because we've ditched the farting aliens, and now we're talking about the impacts of people's actions and relationships.
It's strange though, isn't it? So I wonder if it's, you're right. I think we've gotten over that, and I think it's written slightly differently. I think the effect of it's lessened because we've already had it. But you're right about this one being a budget story, particularly, and the CGI is in parts effective throughout the series. Actually, the first series, and in this one there isn't really much of a call for it, other than those big massive cracks that come up the basin when the rift is opening up, and they don't look particularly clever. So it's kind of nice that we're not really relying on massive effects here. To tell a story, and you're right, this one is kind of more adult than the previous outing, and works all the better for it.
I like the CGI of the TARDIS and the light stream coming out and all that. I think that works.
No, that does work.
They've got the money to shatter the glass, haven't they, for the windows and stuff in the restaurant? And, I don't think it. I know it is cheap. I don't think it looks cheap.
No, it doesn't look.
No.
Absolutely.
No, it works. I think it doesn't need a big, massive. That's what suppose what I'm saying is it didn't need a big, massive budget throwing at this. It's telling a story that's equally as enjoyable. Obviously, again, not wishing to put spoilers out there just yet, but if you think about some of the effects-laden episodes that we've to come or we've had, this tells a story equally as well without all the shazam of all those effects.
All those massive cracks down at Cardiff Bay. Was that CGI?
I'm 25 minutes in. Rude. Just saying.
Trouble is, in the previous installments, we've seen Jason's doctor surgery a couple of times. You don't want the tour from what you can see in this episode.
Oh no! No.
Anyway,
it is rude.
James, do you have any? I don't want to say fact. Do you have any bits of data?
Data, yes, that's a good word for it.
Yeah, I think because facts suggest it might be verified. I think we'll go for data.
So our Bad Wolf reference is very obvious this week, which is the name of the power station.
Blaid Drwg.
Yes, in the Welsh. It had a working title of Dinner with Monsters, which I actually quite like that. I think Boomtown works okay, but I think Dinner with Monsters is quite good. The scenes with Eccleston and Annette in the restaurant, they were filmed really early on because of other filming commitments. So it was filmed at the same time they were doing Empty Child and The Doctor Dances. So the scenes that Jack was doing with Rose, Christopher Eccleston was off doing the restaurant scene. So that was quite early on. You mentioned about William Thomas. It's the first and only Russell T Davies episode that had a previous trailer at the beginning. It comes back later on under Moffat, but it's the first and only one that had previously.
I mean,
that's a tenuous one.
What?
The only Russell T Davies story to have a previously at the start. Oh, come on, babes. What's that? Hang on, but don't be at the start of the next one. Get previously on the long game.
No, I don't think we do.
I think we do.
We do.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Change your website because we get because you get all the clips with Anna Maxwell Martin and stuff, and it's like 500 years ago, and then it's like now.
Okay. That's it then. That was.
No.
Oh no!
The Matrix has lied to us, Sagacity.
Oh yeah, Michael Jason's in the Matrix again.
James Bree's given out the key, hasn't he? He doesn't care. That's not what's on the end of the chain, is it? It's not the Matrix key. Well, anyway, on the humour front, I have to say there were quite a few bits where there's so many sort of just dry lines in it, and the bits like a net where she's like, they wouldn't care because anything could happen in Cardiff because it's just I've got native. And it's just lovely, just bits of humour, which I think again that's quite good for your grown-up audience, isn't it? The kids can watch on one level and the other one. There's lots of lovely little bits like that. Very good.
All those kids watching that are disappointed that she didn't fart at any point during the episode.
She did.
When was it? Oh, in the toilet.
James, what have you been watching?
He's been watching the telly snaps.
Did the meddling monk turn up in the version you watched?
Oh, hang on. That could get it a 10 if we're not careful.
Meddling Monk and Tally Snaps, that's a season winner. She starts farting when she's with the journalist. And then she goes...
Yeah.
And then she turns into the big green monster, which is the Slitheen.
I mean, the rest of it is all... She doesn't in the rest of when she meets the doctor. It's all...
It would have ruined the atmosphere at the restaurant if she sat there trumping, wouldn't it?
Tricky, that would be. Very.
The poison gas comes out of her mouth, though.
If poison gas had come out the other end, it would have been a mood killer, unless you're very specialist. So, do we have any scores on the doors for Doctor Who and the Boomtown?
Jason's waving his arms. He's either having a stroke or asking me to do the scores first. So,
that's his dancing. I think you should be kinder.
Yes. You've seen many times you've seen my dancing. Were you just mimicking my dancing there, James?
It's like that, isn't it?
That's my canine dance.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And actually, pretty much all of them, to be honest.
That's all your dances. Anyway. Right, so on an earlier recording, I did say that Father's Day used to be my favourite episode and that it had been overtaken by another episode in later years. And guess what? It's this episode. I love it. I mean, I just think it's a brilliant piece of writing, drama. It's got the comedy in it. I just think it's very different to what we've had before in Doctor Who, and I think it works. And fair play for them for going, oh, we need a budget episode, and then having this as the budget episode, because I think it just proves that you don't need to spend thousands on CGI to produce a great piece of Doctor Who. So it doesn't have the Master or the Time Meddler or Telesnaps, but I gave it a 10.
Are you sure you didn't watch the Telesnap version of this now?
No. I genuinely, this is the one that I would, from this series, this is the one I would go to first. I just think it's a really good piece of Doctor Who drama and character building stuff. So I love it. 10.
Well, it's very popular in Crinkly Bottom. Talking of Crinkly Bottoms, Jason, what do you award it?
Oh, that's rude. Sorry. Well, you know, I have to resist the temptation of upping the score here just because it's based, obviously, in my hometown and just around the corner from me.
Are you in Cardiff, Jason? I don't think you've ever mentioned this.
I don't think I ever have I? So there we go. Well, look, I'm just going to put it out there before we go through my spiel. I'm not going to be quite as generous, I think, as James in my score for this. And whilst I think this story has some great elements about it, particularly that sort of combination of the comic versus some of the seriousness. For me, this is a very good story, but certainly not perhaps the peak there that James is scored at there. Yes, lots to like about this one. I think there's some great characterization throughout this. Lovely to see Cardiff Bay always being displayed, as I've said a number of times now. But I do think, apart from that bit at the beginning, although even though I kind of like the bit with them all in the TARDIS at the beginning, it is a bit forced and a bit cheesy, but it kind of shows how well it's all gelling together. And I think by this point, as the series is running, everything seems to be settled down, and I think it's quite self-assured of itself by this point, and it's starting to show, and we're starting to realize kind of, I think, some of what we've got to come is going to be a lot better. With no disrespect to anybody's score here, but I am going to be scoring Boomtown a very respectable 8.5.
Those restaurants won't have you back now.
Restaurants? He goes in the bloody Weatherspoons. What are you talking about, restaurants? Burger and a pint. I don't think I'm like, oh, I do nothing suggests you can come back in here again.
Oh, dear Lord, it's true.
Anyway, it's the other shout I was going to say is there's that lovely bit of music that Murray Gold does when Margaret's in the toilet and she's just sad because she's talking about her dead brother. There's a lovely little haunting little theme there that he does, and it's a nice touching it that underpins the moment. So you shouldn't just call out 6 bars of his music, but that's a very lovely little theme that he creates there. That's nice. I do really like Boomtown. I think you two might be overrating it a little bit, but it's fine.
Well, I think I may be upping it for Cardiff Bay, but you never know.
Oh dear. Oh, are you in Cardiff?
How many times do you think I could get it in this recording?
I don't know, because I didn't give Black Orchid 10 because it got 3 seconds of Bewdley in it, did I? I'm from Bewdley, just in case you're not sure it's Bewdley. I mean, from Bewdley.
He would have given if he was an extra in the background in one of the scenes.
When it comes to doing the Marple ones, and when we do the Fourth Issue from Paddington, I'll give that 10 because it's in Bewdley. It's in Bewdley.
Excellent. It's as good a reason.
It's not, because Bewdley's really beautiful. Cardiff, Okay, so picturesque. Beauty is picturesque. It's got a hysterical bridge. It's got
The
a
bay is very
shot.
picturesque. The bay is
Yeah, and
beautiful.
that kind of, urban leftover from Newport vibe. It's lovely. Facts is facts. I mean, crikey, even the Gower in Swansea's nicer than Cardiff Bay. It's actually quite nice to look at. Cardiff Bay is it's London with a bit of water. It's fine. Don't mind. If that's what you like, you do you.
Always.
I mean, to be fair, it only took the death of a couple of officials for them to agree to build a nuclear power plant in the middle of Cardiff. So I mean, it's.
Well, you got to get your electricity somehow, haven't you? You got to get power somehow. Anyway, I awarded Doctor Who and the Boomtown an 8.
Hey.
Which means, drama and drum roll, that it's now a joint leader with Doctor Who and The Empty Child. It is on 26.5.
Well, it's all going on here,
Two
isn't
of them
it?
at the top.
Wow.
It's all. I think some of the static from James's wig has affected the scoring. I also wonder now whether he could have his own ministerial channel on a like the upper end of the EPG. He could be crazy. Anyway,
just the bling. It's the bling that's making me chuckle.
I think it's the flick. It's a little bit. We watched Dark Season this week, and it's a bit like the second part with Jackie Pierce, where they've got all the extras, the blonde wigs doing the dig. It's got shades of that as well. Anyway, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you as always.
Yes, indeed. Pleasure as always. Thanks very much.
We shall see you next time for the Series 1 finale. Can it take the crown? Can it? Like, subscribe, follow us. That's what's up.